This is how I made a fitness bench out of structural grade aluminum. Essentially, what I did was a template routing, which is a very common method used in woodworking. The first thing I did was come up with a design, and then I took that design and transferred it to 1/2 inch thick MDF board. And the concept behind this is just like it sounds. You make a template and then you use a flush cut router bit to trim the pieces to exact size. And then I built the rest of it from there. What I'm doing here is I'm cutting out all the template pieces right up to the line. And what I didn't show is any part of the inside curves or any part of the line that's not perfect. I took a sander and sanded it nice and smooth right up to the line, but not going over. And once you make these templates, you now have the template and you can use this on many, many projects. That's what's the great thing about doing this. Now, you see this done in woodworking all the time, this template routing, but I've never actually seen a metalworking project out of it. And the beauty of aluminum is it's very soft. It has similar qualities to wood. Obviously, there's no grain in it, but the softness of the metal lends itself well to this type of project. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm putting the template down and scribing it. And the reason I'm using a scribe as opposed to a marker or a pen is because when I cut this thing out, I don't want to lose the line. And using the scribe works well in aluminum, and you can see it and you won't lose it. As you see, I'm using a vacuum here to keep the line clear as I'm doing it because it was getting covered up by all the chunks of metal. This is 3/4 inch thick 6061 aluminum. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's basically structural grade, and it is tough to cut, let me tell you. The one thing I did find that I'll pass along was use 8 teeth per inch for metal cutting. And then the thing that really made it much easier was just using a lot of WD-40. I tried other types of lubricants, but WD-40 honestly worked the best. Right here, I'm scribing a line down the center of the bench top, which I did out of 1/2 inch aluminum. And this way I would be able to find the center later on after I cut the curves in it, because the curves would made it much harder to find the center later on. Now, if I were to do a project like this again, there's a good chance I would probably just make the design on a computer and then send it out and get it cut on a fiber laser. But I really wanted to see if this template method would work for this. And it does, but let me tell you, it is a lot of work. Right here, I have a time-lapse video, and it looks quick, but in all honesty, I was going super, super slow, and I kept on having to spray it down. And it's a very tedious process. And here I'm applying double-sided woodworking tape, and then you place the template on top. And as you can see, there's a slight bit of aluminum that's exposed, and that's what will be shaved away when I use this template flush cut routing bit. It basically has a ball bearing that will ride the template, and it'll only cut away where the aluminum is. As you see, I'm going by here. I think this is in regular speed, and you just go nice and slow, and I sprayed down the bit as much as I could. And then here's a time lapse of it, and you can see all the shavings coming away, going right up to, and I was actually pleasantly surprised how well this method works for aluminum. Now, this double-sided tape worked absolutely perfect on aluminum. I was a little worried that it might not stick that well to it, but it gripped onto it absolutely perfect. And another thing I just want to note was these are just regular woodworking sort of routers and jigsaw. I didn't use anything special, anything that's just made for metal. I just wanted to see if it would work. Now, that being said, I ended up going through about 3 router bits and I would say about 5 jigsaw blades. So it definitely takes a toll on the bits. That is an absolute fact. And mainly because that's 3/4 inch aluminum, as I stated earlier, and it's just a lot to route. After I had finished up with all the routing, I would take the templates off using putty knives, and you just kind of slide them underneath. You don't want to rip too much because then you'll end up breaking your template. So now I can use that template again if I ever wanted to make another one of these. And then I just went over and started dry fitting them all, just making sure the pieces are all good to go and have nice flat and square edges. And just getting ready right here to start drilling everything. I wanted to make this thing so I could assemble it and unassemble it whenever I wanted to. So I'm just using a punch right there, and I'm finding the center, and I'm about to drill them out to 1/2 inch. And this tool right here was absolute game changer. I've used this before, and it works great on many projects. It literally replaces a drill press. As a matter of fact, I use this way more than my drill press. I really almost never use the drill press anymore after finding that tool. That particular brand, I believe, is O-Tool, but they have many others like it. Just look up portable drill press or drill press attachment for any handheld drill. And there's a lot of good ones out there, but that one seems to work for me. I want to say it was about $150 or somewhere in that range. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a very versatile tool that helps you do many types of holes in projects that you would never be able to do with a drill press. And you'll see coming up, I was literally able to go right into the side of the aluminum, and you could never do something like that on a drill press. It's got just many different things you can do. Because the absolute key to pulling a project off like this is being able to drill perfectly straight holes. And on this, you can see that it has a centering pins, and I was able to drill perfectly center of the aluminum, which would have been really hard to pull off with any other type of method of drilling. Now, this tool coming up is called a tap gun, and it's not absolutely necessary to do this, but I had it and it worked very well. So as you can see, it holds a tap, and then you just pull the trigger and it goes in, and then all you do is pull right back out, and it just reverses the tap. You can use a handheld tap, and you could use an impact gun, but this, just made my life that much easier to pull this thing off. As I was building this bench, I realized that I could have undersized the aluminum way more than I did. As I stated earlier, that's 3/4 inch right there, and there's no doubt in my mind this bench could hold thousands of pounds after it was finished. And it's just something that I made a mental note of. If I were to make another one of these, I would definitely downgrade the size of the aluminum, mainly because of the cost. And one of the most challenging parts of the project was actually putting on these feet, because I had to come up with a jig system in order to drill perfectly straight holes. This drill press attachment works great, but you needed a method in order to drill straight down into it. As you can see, I just attached it to a piece of wood, and then I put 2 blocks on the side of the aluminum and was able to drill perfectly straight holes. And then I just finished it up with the tap gun, and everything worked out all right, but it was a little bit of a challenge to figure it out. And here I am just kind of doing a dry run on this thing and seeing how it feels. To me, it worked out perfect in its size and its shape. And then to assemble everything, I went with 1/2 inch stainless steel countersunk bolts. And the idea here is to get everything nice and flush, so when I put the leather top on, it sits absolutely perfectly flat to the surface. So the idea originally behind this project was to make a workout bench that was both functional and had some style to it. So that's why I went with the curves on the design, and then I also decided to go with a walnut quarter sawn veneer, and it helps it not look so cold. And then on the top, you're going to see towards the end, I went with a 15-ounce leather top. And then it was actually quite simple to put this stuff on. I used the templates again, and I went big as I was cutting these things out. And then you literally just pull the veneer backing off. It's called a pressure sensitive adhesive. And the idea behind it is you stick it on and then you put a lot of pressure on this thing to make the adhesive work correctly. The best method I found for applying the pressure was just a scrap piece of wood that you see on the left of the screen there. It had a rounded edge on it so as to not catch the veneer. I was a little apprehensive about putting veneer over aluminum, but the more research I did, and also this thing has been in use for at least 3 to 6 months now, and the veneer is on there rock solid and it's not going anywhere. One of the most important things was also to use a brand new razor blade, and I ended up buying a veneer edge banding sort of tool and thought I was going to use that for the edges, and I didn't even use it. I just used the razor blade, cut a nice perfect edge, and then on the edges that were still left, I took 150 grit sandpaper and just lightly sanded the edge and tried to not scratch the aluminum as I was doing it, and it worked out well. I found that the best method was to take all of the backing off first, and then in one nice smooth motion just put it on top of the veneer and just pressing down on it, as opposed to trying to take a little bit of the backing off at a time. The other thing to note is before I put this veneer on, I used acetone to clean everything and get all the oils out of it. Because when you buy metals, what they do a lot of times is have just a light oil on top of them, and you want to make sure you remove all of that before you attempt to put veneer on any sort of metal. The good thing about these veneers is they do come pretty much perfectly sanded, so I had very minimal sanding to do, unlike most other wood projects I've done, and it's just hours of sanding. So that was very nice to not have to do that. And then for the coating, I just went with a hard wax finish, and it seems to be holding up great, and love the way that it came out. For the top of the bench, I went with a 15-ounce leather top, which is about 1/4 inch thick. And I was a little apprehensive about that as well, because I was unsure that it was going to be comfortable enough. But it actually is perfect for a workout bench. You're not going to get this super soft top like you see on some other benches that use a lot of fill and then just a little bit of leather. This is just one solid slab of leather, and I'm very happy with it because it gives you the perfect amount of firmness that you need to work out, but still being comfortable where it's not going to rip up your back. Now again, I used a brand new fresh razor blade before I made the cut, and the key on this is very hard pressure as you're cutting, and around the edges here, or the ends I should say, it was a little tougher to cut to make a perfectly round cut, so I just cut it off in little pieces, and I just used sandpaper to smooth it out the best I could. I wanted to go with a nice clean square edge on it, but one thing I will say, after been using this bench for a little while, I would probably rather round that edge just a little more so it's not sharp. The leather top itself is great to work out on, and the edge isn't too bad, but the rounded edge would just make it that much better. I ended up sealing the edge with some leather sealant. And another thing that I probably would do different next time, instead of just going with the natural color of the edge, is maybe put some sort of black paint on that just to give it a little bit more definition. I put double-sided carpet tape on to temporarily hold it, but ultimately I will end up gluing the top right on, and we'll see how it holds long term. Overall, I'm super happy with the way this thing turned out. It's just interesting, unique. It is super strong. Like I said, this thing will hold a couple of 1,000 pounds, no doubt in my mind. And it's got form, function, and to me, it came out pretty beautiful. So I'll leave you with some closing shots.